Yeah, what I wanted to do, again, from a de-risking strategy, was to raise enough money that we could build the product, get it to market, launch it, and have some runway before starting.
Hello, so today we have Neil Smith, one of Britain's most successful TV producers, running the company that made The Apprentice, Grand Designs, The Undateables, among many others. He left this position to follow his dream and set up a new tech company focusing on his real passion of wellness. He formed the brand Mettle, a hub for mental fitness tools for men. He has so far raised over 1.7 million from angel investors. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, glad to be here.
So usually what I do is I launch straight into your story of the raise and how that came about. But I actually want to talk a little bit about your transition from TV producer, having this kind of amazing job that a lot of people would kind of revere and like just be totally wowed by, and sort of almost, moving away from that completely and setting up something completely different in mental health.
Yeah, well, there's an answer for that. I would say midlife crisis. Dave,
Right.
I know I kind of sat here, like a couple of months ago, and raising can be quite a dark time, especially in the winter. Thinking, what the hell have I done? I was, it was a surprise to me as much as anybody that I ended up as kind of, running one of the biggest production companies in the UK. My kind of journey was, the things that I ran these companies, but the things that I ran them from a creative and a commercial point of view. So my background is I'm a director, a series producer, exec producer, creative director, and then I ended up running the companies from a commercial point of view as well. So I oversaw all the P&L, but also all the creative, the development and the production. But the things that I was most passionate about that we made were things that took important subject matters and brought them to a mainstream audience for the good of all, including the company, because when you take something to a big audience, you're obviously successful. So a good example would be the show The Undateables, which was a show that we made at the company that I ran, one before last, called Betty. And The Undateables, for those that don't know, it's a show about people with disabilities going on dates. Now, if we'd have made a documentary about people with disabilities only, by the nature of documentaries, people who are interested in people with disabilities would have watched it. So it's sort of like preaching to the choir, if you like. But by creating like a factual entertainment show in the dating genre, which is the world's biggest genre, putting it on 9 o'clock on Channel 4, we were able to get all the people who watch 9 o'clock Channel 4 shows, which was a lot of people at the time. And that show went on to kind of run for 20 seasons. Got remade everywhere from France to the Ukraine, sold all over the world. Netflix tried to buy it, and in the end, sort of, they have a very similar version, let's say.
Oh, right. So that's not actually yours, that one. I've seen that one.
Yeah,
right.
Love on the Spectrum. Yeah. It's I'm not sure kind of how the company I used to run feels about that, but anyway. But yes, that was a show that they tried to buy off us, but Channel 4 saw it as kind of jewel in the crown. So rightly kept it. And but that show made kind of millions and millions of pounds for the company, but in doing so changed the perceptions of millions of people about how disabled people want to find love. Which is something that perhaps people didn't even realize, and how we're all the same underneath, if you like. When I left that company, Changing Faces, who are the facial disfigurement charity I work with quite closely in a number of ways, actually, said, look, 20 years of marketing budget could never have done what that show has done to change kind of perceptions of disability. A show I did more recently was a show called 60 Days on the Streets. There was a very bad homelessness explosion in around 2018 in London. And, we were like, okay, well, how can we tackle homelessness on TV in a way that will bring a big audience to it? I'd just been making shows with a guy called Ed Stafford, who's a survival guy who normally
Mm-hmm.
spends 60 days and 60 nights on a desert island with nothing but his camera on Discovery, and a show called Marooned. I said, look, Ed, you are, you're male, adopted, suffer mental health problems, ex-military, all kind of risk factors for ending up on the streets. And he had a real affinity for it. And I said, well, let's just do, why don't we do, actually, it was one of our development producers came up with the idea. I thought it was a brilliant idea. Why, let's get Ed to kind of, we'll just do his kind of, his 60 days format, but we'll do it on the streets of London, Manchester and Glasgow instead over a British winter. And so bringing that survival ethos, if you like, to a very raw kind of homelessness series. And that kind of, I think it quintupled the Young share on Channel 4, and it was one of their biggest hit new series launches for sort of 5 years. So, that's kind of what I've been passionate about. So I call it bringing the edges to the middle, or hiding the vegetables, or smuggling in the good stuff. And so I left my company to set up my own business, solely focused on kind of doing that thing. So bringing important subjects and getting them to a mainstream audience. But the thing that I really wanted to do, so my passion, as you say, my passion was for wellness. Yeah. So I really wanted to crack the wellness space. That's really what I had in mind when I set up my company. I've been meditating since the age of 12. Mm-hmm. So, which is quite unusual. I was born with a disease of the nervous system called benign intention tremor, which means you shake really badly. It's a bit like having Parkinson's, or it looks a bit like Parkinson's. But, at the age of 11, I shook so bad that I couldn't get a teaspoon of sugar into a cup of tea, which wasn't a great look for a kid growing up in High Wycombe at the time. And my uncle also has the disease. It's hereditary, and he shakes. And he'd made a bit of money in horse racing, and was able to kind of, go to Harley Street and, chat to a few decent doctors and say, look, and there's no cure for this disease. But they said there is this one thing that we've heard of which might help, which is called meditation. And so from the age of kind of 11 or 12, I started meditating for 30 minutes or 60 minutes a day, and it has controlled, seemingly lifelong, my shaking. Yeah. And to say, if I was at the age of 11, I was shaking really badly, and he shakes in his 70s, then my life was to be a shaker, if you see what I mean. And that really transformed my life. And I kind of got really into meditation, and, I studied under kind of Himalayan yogis and on tantra schools, and, Vipassana, 10-day silent retreats and all that. Mm-hmm. And then I was really into breath work as well, studied the Wim Hof method, holotropic breathing, transformational breath. And when I was in my 20s, I suffered from depression. And like most men, or many men, didn't tell anybody and suffered in silence for a really long time. And I was very fortunate in that I was able to be introduced to somebody who worked with kind of clinical hypnotherapy, who was able to effectively cure me, I think, of depression, and didn't come back. So these kind of three things, meditation, breathwork, self-hypnosis, if you like, form part of my daily wellness routine, my mental fitness routine, if you like. They're really, really important to me. But I saw that when I talked to my mates about it, who are outwardly successful guys, looking after their physical fitness, boxing, going to the gym, when I talked about meditation, they just kind of stare in their pints and want to know what time the football was on. It was a taboo subject. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because they don't want to speak about this. They don't want to speak about these tools that are able to help them with their mental health, which in some of their cases is suffering. And then you look at that, you zoom out and look at the macro picture of men's mental health. Now, the problem we've got at the moment is that there's a suicide epidemic, and that suicide, horrifically, is now the biggest killer of men under 45 in the UK, and a similar picture in the US. And we all know now that the part of the problem is that men don't talk about their feelings, and they need to talk about it. Yeah. And there's that message is out there, and that's an important message, but it's perhaps not changing behavior quick enough. So I thought, okay, well, there's a similar problem here. So there's these guys, my mates, who won't use meditation and hypnosis and breathwork tools, which could really help them. There's this bigger problem. Men are suffering for their mental health. Could I provide guys with meditation and these mental fitness tools, yeah, in order to help them hopefully improving their mental fitness? Yeah, because we know that that meditation, for example, and other practices are proven to kind of lower anxiety and depression incidences. I realized it wasn't going to be a TV show, and I had to create an app. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, I've got to give them the tools, give them the physical tools to do it, but it's still content, so it's something that I'm really comfortable with, but it's giving them content in a different form. So yeah, obviously I'd not made any apps before. Yeah. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I can do this. This is kind of bringing the edges to the middle. It's taking an important subject and bringing it to a mainstream audience. So I kind of joined an accelerator company. So a startup accelerator, they're called One Day, and they kind of help a lot of people with kind of bringing their dreams into reality. And what happened was, and this is part of my fundraising story, I guess, because I had to create a credible tech business. Yeah, I'm a producer, and I can call in all sorts of kind of, so my co-founder is actually a celebrity who we're not ready to announce yet, but really kind of big in this kind of personal empowerment space, a global name who will be announcing soon. Actually, Paul McKenna, I can announce. So Paul McKenna is the world's most successful hypnotist. He's come on board as our hypnosis expert. So having these big TV contacts and being able to kind of amplify messages is really helpful, but I didn't know what to do on the tech side. So I joined this company One Day, and a couple of weeks in, my mentor, who was a woman with a 21-year-old son who, was concerned about this area as well, said, look, I love this idea. I really think it could work. I want to come on board as your first investor and bring cash and sweat equity. And she really kind of helped me build out that kind of tech side of the business, which was really important. The first thing that we did, and this is kind of relevant to raising, was we tried to validate the idea. Because at the moment, I'm just a guy with an idea and a bit of a track record in bringing important issues to big audiences. And that's what I wanted to do with this. So she's like, look, what there's lots of meditation tools out there. What do you think? Why do you think guys aren't using them? And I said, well, I think it's because the same reason they're not talking about their mental health, because they feel vulnerable. Yeah, we're taught to be men, tough men, that vulnerability is, weakness. And no matter how much we say that that's not right, it's still hard to change. It's been bred into us through millennia. And, the reason they're not using perhaps the calms and the headspaces of this world is because they see them as not for them. They make them feel vulnerable in some way. And so we interviewed a couple hundred men, and sure enough, it was like, they're too female, they're too hippie-ish. It's not for me. There's nothing wrong with me. Yeah. So we needed to kind of, so my theory, or our theory, was, okay, well, we've got to break down those barriers to entry. Yeah. So guys aren't using, because this is a product for ordinary guys. I just want to help ordinary guys with their mental fitness. We need to break down those objections to kind of entry, which were, as I thought, were the same as the ones with mental health, as vulnerability. So, okay, so it's just, those are for women, so they make me feel vulnerable. Okay, guys, this is a product that's just for you. It's a toolkit for men's minds. Okay, it's too hippie-ish. All right, no, guys, this is simple, no-nonsense, science-backed tools. There's nothing wrong with me. This is mental fitness. It's aspirational. It's not about being anything wrong with you. We're probably not even going to mention mental health in the app. It's all about mental fitness. But we know through, for example, we're working with Imperial College. We're very fortunate in that we've got an amazing academic partner there who's working with us, who, one of the professors that we're working with has worked in this space before and knows that it kind of can work. If you change the narrative around male mental health, then you can have really positive kind of impacts. Anyway, so we took it out to a kind of validation. So we did a validation study, which was really, really important for starting the raise. We went to an independent validation company called Algorithm, who do kind of social media paid ads, etc., social media strategy, and run kind of validation studies. And so at the time we were called Headshed. We're now called Mettle, as in METTLE, a person's ability to cope with difficulties. At the time, we were called Headshed, but that didn't test so well in the States because people thought it was about a hair loss product. But we validated our idea. We Algorithm created a number of adverts for us and ran them on kind of test sites. So Facebook, Instagram.
And this is before you had a product, was it?
Yeah, this is before we had a product. I mean, we're
really interesting.
So we're still building.
To listen to. Yeah, I mean, just it's fascinating to think that you can do all this validation without a product. You're kind of pre-MVP, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the first thing we did was validated the idea. I mean, I am not a tech person. I'm a creative and a business leader. Yeah. And I'm passionate about ideas, and I believe that I can change the world with them. And we've sort of been able to do it before, and let's hope we can do it again. But I think what we're trying to follow, I guess you would call the lean startup method, which is kind of you really are kind of looking at minimal kind of build until we test everything before building anything. Yeah. So of course the first thing we had to do is test the idea before we build the idea, and so the validation was key. So we knew we'd interviewed these guys. Yeah, we knew that there was these objections to using these things. And we asked them, "Would you use them?" And they said yes, but we didn't know for sure because we might have been leading the witness. So the validation company, they said, "Okay, well look, we'll run this study. We'll put adverts out there. Headshed, the toolkit for men's minds, simple, no nonsense, meditation, breathwork, mind hacking, which is what we're calling our kind of self-hypnosis NLP section, led by Paul McKenna." We didn't mention any kind of celebrities or anything like that. It was just really straightforward adverts with kind of push and pull motivation. So push, do you want to be happier, healthier, more successful? Or are you worried about your mental health? And the guys there said, look, for an idea to be kind of worth pursuing, you kind of need to perform 5 to 10% of our benchmark on kind of Facebook click-through rates and etc. And our click-through rates on Facebook weren't actually 5 to 10% above benchmark. They were 500% above benchmark. And on Instagram, our clicks to download. So we had a download now button, which people press, and we said, look, we're not quite ready. We'll take your email. Our rates were 2,267% above benchmark. So rather than 1 in 100 people who saw those ads trying to download the app, we had 1 in 4, which was an astonishing result.
Yeah. And,
let's hope that we can replicate those in the real world. But, that when those adverts went out to ordinary guys, so I said, look, it's really important that we get the blokes, not just the wokes, if you like. Yeah. So I guess I'm a woke, but of bloke origin. And what was important, we tested these 2 sites. Obviously, you can see where everything's going. And what was interesting was that the blokes, so on the football sites, the rugby sites, Magaluf Weekenders, whatever it might be, tested actually slightly better than the wokes, which was an amazing result. And after that, it went quite stellar, I'd say, the idea. So we did do kind of, our early MVP work, I guess, after that point, was kind of creating kind of a little bit of design work, clickable Figmas, wireframes, so kind of things on paper, but not building the physical product. And what we did want to build was an incredible team around it in order that, we can de-risk the product. So when I approach things as a kind of producer, I think, okay, let's say, so the last show that, I kind of developed and sold in my last job was a show called Snowflake Mountain, which we sold to Netflix. So that's a big show, worth, several £1 million. And so obviously we've never made that show because it's a new idea. So you de-risk it by getting the best talent, having the best production managers on board, the best producers, et cetera, et cetera. So my job was, okay, let's de-risk this product as much as possible by bringing, our global co-founder, our celebrity co-founder, Paul McKenna, working with Imperial College. We're in advanced talks, I can't announce it yet, but, with a part of the NHS, which will really help on kind of building out that medical side and giving us a really solid medical grounding. We're going to be a business to consumer foremost product, but there's opportunities for B2B without a shadow of a doubt. And kind of having that kind of medical and academic partnership, which we've built in right from the beginning, will really help. We took on some amazing advisors, all of whom really helped with the raise. So, for example, so we're working with, one of our advisors is a top health tech VC. So it comes with huge experience in the space and kind of help us negotiate kind of, or navigate, I should say, what works and what doesn't, kind of pitfalls to look out for. We're working with a guy called JC, who is the co-founder of Movember. Now, he has, I guess, 20 years of experience of kind of talking to men about their health and getting them to engage with it and making it cool. Yeah, whereas normally it's uncalled for guys to engage with their health and their mental health. So he's probably, one of the top guys in the whole of the world who's kind of done this before, if you like. So I guess that was our journey. It was our validation, build a strong team, and bringing in brilliant CTOs, great CPOs, or part-time CPOs, strategy guys, a really, really great COO who used to be a CFO of Sony Television EMEA, so hugely experienced in the kind of M&A space. And people were joining as well because they believed in the product. They saw that there's this massive problem with men's mental health, and there was a gap in the market. The meditation app market's forecast for 6x growth by 2030, but yet there's no meditation apps for men, specifically for men. Kind of 20,000 that are out there. So that's that it's not that they don't want it; it's just that they haven't been brought the right product, in my opinion. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic story. It's so interesting for founders to listen to this, and the fact is, you've talked about the team, your background, the brand, but like nothing about the technology. And a lot of people start with the technology. They go, I want to do this tech, and they focus so much on the tech, and they're so much about explaining to investors, oh, this is the tech, this is what it does, this is what it does. And you have come in from completely the other angle.
Yeah.
You've come in with an idea, a concept.
That's right.
And it seems like, you could see the problem. Obviously, the problem is a massive feature in any pitch deck and any pitch to investors. You've seen the problem, but you've come at it from this different angle, which is not talking about mental health, but rebranding it as mental fitness and making it a strength, and talking about mind hacking and building a very, very strong team, and then validating it with traction. So you're basically going to the investors and saying, we have got traction. We've got a 500% click-through rate. And I think that a lot of founders might actually not realize that that's the way to go about it. They spend, thousands of their own money on developing tech without the validation, without the traction. So I think that's a huge lesson for anyone listening to this, that you can do it, and you can almost do the tech bit last, right? That's kind of what you've done.
Well, it sort of that's what makes sense to us, because really the tech, as I say, look, tech serves retention. Yeah. So tech serves outcomes for men. Yeah. Our job is to make men healthier, happier, more successful. Yeah. If the tech does that, great. Otherwise, we don't need it. Yeah. And we're looking at all sorts of great tech. With Imperial, we're looking at machine learning and AI, and it will be probably at some point anyway, quite a technologically advanced product. But we're only going to build a product once we've tested it on our beta community, which is what we're doing now. Testing features. Obviously, we'll use some of our experience and instinct, because what we've been fortunate enough to do is bring a very experienced team together from kind of the worlds of kind of technology and advertising and marketing and television and various and tech and kind of VC. But yeah, tech has to kind of serve retention. And in a way, I guess I'm approaching it because I've seen it done, or we've done it before, which is, let's just bring that idea, change the narrative around it, so you're taking an idea to the place where people are at, rather than trying to get them to the place you want them to go. So for example, Calm and Headspace, who I admire greatly, are brilliant, but they want the men to go there when they see barriers to them going there, which are the ones we talked about. Yeah. So we've got to go to the men rather than expect them to go to the places that we want them to go. So it's about, it's a kind of rebranding kind of exercise, I guess. And as you say, about aspiration and positivity. But we didn't need to build the tech. That didn't make sense to spend money on tech, which was of course, the most expensive part of the process.
Right.
And, we've all been working for free. I mean, as you know, I was, up until a couple of years ago, I had a very highly paid, well-respected job. I made a joke the other day about, my assistant's office is bigger than the one that we've got now. I mean, it's kind of like my life has changed extraordinarily, but I'm on a sort of mission from God, to use a kind of Blues Brothers kind of phrase, But yeah, also, it was a really tough time to raise. And I think that, if we'd spent loads of money in the early days, that would have been a bad thing to do, because we would have run out of cash, because we were investing just our own money. It was an interesting time to raise, because we've raised money in what's been said to be the biggest tech downturn since tech has started, effectively. But I guess some of the skills that I've been equipped with from running TV companies, TV is a brutal industry. It's not like making widgets where you can say, well, okay, I'm going to make this many widgets this year and hopefully more next year by increasing output and getting a few new customers. You have to keep companies going on new ideas, which come from nothing. So it's a very difficult industry. And so, when it was kind of like, oh, you can't raise now, nobody can raise now, there's a tech downturn, it's like, well, we have to raise, so we're going to raise. And I think attitude was really important in that as well.
Okay, let me. Yeah, that's brilliant that you brought it back to that, because I want to talk about the fundraise journey. Just going back to what you're saying about, you were in the accelerator and you were developing the idea. And was it at that point where you met this woman, this mentor with a 21-year-old son? That was gonna, and did she put in some initial seed money into it?
Yeah. We both kind of funded things like, we built, effectively we built.
How did you meet her then? How did that come about?
So, obviously my app will not be, the app we're building will not be kind of in any way woo-woo, but I guess I'm a bit of a hippie. So, a lot of my good fortune, I guess, in building this product has come from playing tennis, for example.
Right. Okay.
So I'll just take you on the tennis journey, if I may. Feel free to cut this out. But basically, I played tennis at my local club at 10:30 on a Monday morning, or I did do. And naturally, the only people really who can play tennis at 10:30 on a Monday morning are people who aren't working yet, because it's like the worst times to play tennis otherwise. But for me, it got me in a really good state, and I was just forming my company. Originally, I should say it was going to be a TV company, but as soon as I had this idea and I realized this was the way to do it, I kind of closed down the TV side of it. And I will still develop TV programs, but only if they're about male mental health. But anyway, so I was playing tennis at 10:30 on a Monday morning, and it's with a group of septuagenarian women. And I just took up tennis, so it's great to play against them. They don't move too fast, but they're very accurate. And but it was only us who ever play. And then one day this guy turns up, and he's like about 40 years old. And I'm like, oh, how come you can play tennis on a 10:30 on a Monday morning? And he's like, well, actually, I've just had a tech exit. I'm like, oh, great, because I'm trying to get a tech product together. And he introduced me. He said, well, I'm a mentor on this scheme, this One Day. And so he introduced me to One Day. And so I signed up, and I was introduced to my mentor, Steph, and she loved what I was doing right from the start and was really passionate about it. And then a couple of weeks and she announced that. But so many opportunities came from that tennis, actually. There's
right.
So a couple of weeks later, another guy turns up playing tennis. And I'm like, how come you can play tennis on 10:30 in the Monday morning? Well, he's like, well, I've just moved back from, I've been 15 years in Silicon Valley. I was head of design at Facebook and Google Maps and Oculus. I'm like, brilliant. I've got this idea. And he's now one of our kind of product advisors, which is amazing. And then we had another guy who turned up at 10:30 on a Monday morning. I'm like, how come you can play tennis? And I told him about the idea, and he said, oh, I'm the ex-CFO, chief financial officer of Sony Television EMEA, so a huge kind of CFO who'd left and, had his own mental health journey, it's fair to say, and got really into meditation as a work form of rehabilitation, but hadn't wanted to go back to work for a while, and was able to take some time out. And he heard about the idea, and he said, I'd love to invest in this. And I remember telling him about it. And then the next day he said, can I come around to your house? And I said, yeah, sure. I thought, oh, is he an Amway salesman? Is he going to try and sell me something? But no, he came around and said, look, I just wanted to speak to you in person. This is the first thing. This is so personal to me. I want to invest, but equally I want to come and run the company and make it a commercial success. And I can do that. So, it's kind of these you know,
Okay, so you bet.
the
Sorry to cut you
universe
off.
pointing me in the right direction is
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. No, sorry to interrupt there.
Yeah.
I want to sort of jump in because it's so interesting to sort of hear how you've. I mean, I'm just fascinated to see what did you actually present to them. What was the presentation? Was it like a PDF deck where you've properly written it out and it was a good presentation, or was it just literally, you know, on the back of a napkin or some notepads, or what was it?
So what we present. So firstly, clearly I'm passionate about it. Yeah, I'm really fortunate in that I've been very successful in what I've done previously. Yeah, so that does carry a certain amount of kudos. Yeah, ultimately, what an app is in this case is a publishing business. Yeah, we're publishing content that people will interact with. Yeah, and it has to be sticky. You know, that's a big thing. You know, for men as well. You know, you can't just expect them to turn up at a content library and kind of find their way through. So some of these kind of apps I go to, and there's like 1,000 meditations, and I'm a compulsive meditator. I find it very hard to stick at the apps available. You know, I'll go there and there's like 1,000 choices. And I'm like, God, I've only got 10 minutes. I'm more stressed now, more anxious because I've got FOMO. Should I be doing that one or should I be doing this one? So, you know, stickiness is really important, and kind of, you know, like, you know, when we create a TV series, we can't just have people watching like the beginning. They've got to watch the whole episode, and then they've got to watch the next 6 episodes, and then they come back for series 3, 4, 5, whatever. So, I mean, one of the things that and you know, that's what I brought with me, and my passion and ability to kind of explain why I'm doing it, show the gap in the market, my personal journey, all really, 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 really helped. Yeah, that's what I would say is kind of so important. You know, so I'm not trying to sell. I haven't just spotted a gap in the market and then come up with an idea to solve it. This has been a lifelong mission, and this is the denouement of that mission. And I think that passion is number one. Yeah, I would say. Yeah. Plus the people that we can talk about that we've brought on board already through de-risking it, you know, as I say, big celebrities, Paul McKenna. You know,
Were they signed up by the time you were talking to these initial seed investors?
No, a couple of them were. Yeah, a couple.
But there were friends, contacts. They showed,
you know, there were already people. It started to happen quite quickly. You know, but I guess what we presented them with in terms of materials. So I guess one of our kind of killer materials was a sizzle, as we call it in the trade. Yeah. So quite often you see videos of founders, talking to camera. Fortunately, having worked in television for 25 years, we were able to effectively create a very, very high standard sizzle. Yeah. Very little money or no money, effectively. And that is just really explaining the concept, you know, and the usual kind of things. So, you know, okay, here's the concept. Here's why it's important. Here's the gap in the market. Here's market size. Here's the opportunity. Here's how we're going to do things differently. This is the team that's on board so far. This is where we're looking to launch. This is the amount we're looking to raise. This is the team, you know, you know, so that sizzle really, really helped.
So
then, sorry,
that's the contents of the standard pitch deck, but you've put it in your, you know, you're using your expertise. You've put it in using the tools of communication that you know.
Yes,
and so not only was it different, but it had all the, you know, it was expert. It had expertise in your communication through visual and audio. So that's really interesting that you've kind of used your background and your skills to kind of reformat, because that would have made it look fresh as well. Yeah.
So that was useful, you know. And Steph, who was my mentor one day, who I mentioned, was like, "You've got to do that. You know, you've got to use that." It was how he really pushed me to kind of create something that was really high class, and that was a good move. Yeah, it was. You know, and also we had, you know, we built out very quickly a data room, you know, pretty substantial. So not just a deck or a one-pager, but a data room that anybody could look at, which contains everything you could possibly want to know, really. You know, like biographies on the team, frequently asked questions. You know, when we worked very early with a financial modeler to kind of work out, industry metrics. So, we took, as I say, de-risking is important, so I always look at projects and try to de-risk them. I guess the difference, much as I'd love to be a 20-something just out of university, I'm not, but the strength of that is that I've got experience, and having run big content companies, I'm naturally cautious. And actually my COO, who's also run all these companies for Sony Television, is equally cautious. So and I think this is important. So as I say, de-risk through team, really, validation, knowing the market, and then we work with a financial modeler who kind of had access to, who does a lot of the kind of financial modeling for Octopus Ventures, amongst others, I think other VCs, who kind of has access to industry metrics, around kind of existing kind of meditation apps and stuff like that, and could show multiples and all that. And so we worked out quite quickly a 5-year cash flow forecast. So quite a detailed financial proposition right from the start.
But still
so
without the actual product.
Still without the actual product.
See, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so we kind of, because now we're building the product. So the theory was, what I wanted to do, again from a de-risking strategy, was to raise enough money that we could build the product, get it to market, launch it, and have some runway before starting. Because the people's money who put their money in are myself, my friends, my family, angels, who each one of them I've spoken to personally and got to know, and I trust and like and respect them. And it was important that we didn't risk that money until everything was in place, until we knew we could finish. I guess that was another part of the de-risking strategy. It's like, let's not build this until we know we can finish it and launch it, until we're in a really good position.
So let's just talk about that. So was it like the money came in increments? So you put some money in, you had this initial investor that you met on the accelerator, plus another one. And then were you able to do something with that money before you did the bigger raise? Because you've raised up to 1.7 million now. So what's that
so
gap?
Basically, so we didn't, other than our own money of the founding team, and our own sweat equity, which was substantial, we didn't spend any investor money. My thing was like, we'll get the money committed, and it's worth talking about timing here as well, about bringing in money as well. We'll get the money committed, but we won't spend any investor money until we know we can finish the job. Because that was I thought that was the most sensible way to do it. And other people do it different ways. They get the money in, they start, but I didn't want to start until I knew I could finish. And with everybody saying that it's the toughest market in human history, it's kind of like, that made me extra cautious. I didn't want to take people's money, spend it, not be able to finish the job. So that was a really conscious decision. And I guess partly why we delayed the building of the product until we knew we launched it.
And what was that kind of fund that you didn't touch? How much was in that sort of initial seed fund?
So, I mean, we look at it as one round, which we're still doing. So we've still got a bit of raising to do, but we're at a point where we're very safe now. So we've got enough to finish the job. Anything else is runway and marketing budget. So it's kind of icing on the cake, which is also kind of reassuring to the last investors to come in, because they know that we've already got enough money to do the job.
Well, and you've tested the marketing as well.
We've tested a lot.
So you know your return on ad spend, because you did that as part of the initial.
And we review it very frequently. So we keep testing it. So we've got numerous financial models, so high case, low case, base case. What happens if we have this much money? What happens if we have that much money? We're constantly testing it and reevaluating, talking to our key team, our CTO, our chief strategy officer. How much? What's the forecast looking like for our development spend? What's the forecast looking like for our kind of marketing and budgeting, PR spend, and constantly interrogating that, which is the correct way to, in my opinion, to run a startup. And in the opinion of our COO, who's been on the board of all of Sony Television startups outside of the US, for however many years. But basically, so we looked at it, we're looking at it as one raise. Yeah. So we didn't do a pre-seed. I guess you'd call this a seed. I don't know. It
doesn't really matter what you call it, is it? I mean,
who cares? Doesn't matter to me. We need we need $1.5 million. We've got that. We want 2.5. It's all EIS compliant. And this is really important, actually. I should just mention this in a bit. But, the first thing in was we kind of did an SEIS round, but it was all flowed into one round. So it was all of the kind of same terms. And that just went like in a week to kind of friends and family. And then we started talking to angels, etc., on EIS, which is still nonetheless incredibly attractive kind of way to offset tax, as 30% back on your first tax bill and capital gains relief, loss relief, all sorts of things, which is a brilliant initiative from the government in order to get people to put money back into businesses. So I guess we got about, so we didn't start at all. So we raised this money from, I guess, November-ish, but we didn't take it in until March. So we started talking to people about November, but we didn't take the money in until we were kind of ready to take it in, which was kind of March. And then we took it in all pretty much at once. And we took it in at the end of the tax year. So one thing that really worked in our favor, because, people talk about, is that money committed or money in the bank? So investors often say, how much have you got on? How much of that is committed and how much of it is in the bank? Mm-hmm. But in order for people to kind of get their EIS and SEIS allowance for this tax year just gone, obviously they had to put it in by the end of the tax year, which was 4th of April. So we effectively worked our round so we could collect everything by that deadline, which meant people had to put the cash in order to qualify for the SEIS or EIS in that tax year, which really worked in our favor because that meant we suddenly had, I think it was £1.3 million in the bank account after the 5th of April. Mm-hmm. So
you used that deadline to your advantage then?
Absolutely. So we could see what was going to happen. So we raised on paper, £1.5 million or whatever it was at the time. We hadn't taken in any, we hadn't spent any consciously because we said we wouldn't do it until we knew we had enough money to finish. And then we knew there was this deadline coming up in the diary. So, that was 5th of April. We set our start date as 17th of April. And that's when we started our spend. So until that, we just spent our own money. And, I think that was hopefully the right thing to do.
Do you think that it's probably too early to say because as recording this, we're in May now. So you started about a month ago, less than a month ago.
Yeah.
In 2023, having raised in late, the end of the tax year for 22-23. And how do you, I guess you can't really say that now, but with all your cash projections, your cash flow forecasts, all that sort of stuff, does it already look like you're going to hit those targets, or do you think that there's going to be have you got some sort of, you said you've got like a worst case scenario, best case scenario, and are you going to sort of use that as a gauge to how you're spending and monitoring?
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we will build our product. Yeah. We will work very carefully to make sure we build it on the budget that we have allocated. And the rest is marketing. Yeah. So what you would do is you do your first launch, you do your launch and you see how things work. If things are working well, you're getting good kind of downloads and retentions and paying customers, then you will increase the marketing spend. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If things aren't going as well, you decrease the marketing spend in order that you can sort out the product and get it working and give yourself more runway. So that's kind of like that's how we're looking at, modeling our
And
kind of spend.
I know you've got an amazing team around you. So how much advice are you getting, and from what sources? Who's the one sort of driving? Is it you? Because you've not done this before. You've worked
No.
in other things, but who is it that's giving you the advice on that?
On what?
On the spend, on the management, on the cash flow? Is it your CEO or CFO?
Yeah.
Or...
So yeah. I mean, it's the COO really driving that, but this is just a startup business. Whether it's tech or it's TV, it's a content business. It's a startup. Yeah, everything's about runway and cash flow, and when you break even, it's just a business. So you apply the same rules effectively to this business as you do to others, which is like, how much runway can I give myself, and what are my levers that I can pull if things don't work the way that we think they will. We've been really fortunate in that we've had, incredible advice from so many people. Sean Azam, who's the chief operations officer, and chief CFO as well, of Sweatcoin, which is like the fastest growing health and fitness app in history. Has been a great supporter of ours right from the start, and has been, really great in kind of interrogating some of our thinking. But ultimately it's a business, and we're just going to approach it in the leanest way possible. So, in terms of kind of the tech side, we've got a lot of people helping with that. We've got some incredible people on board, brilliant award-winning CTO, or CDO, if you like, Alistair. We've got phenomenal advisors like the ex-CPO for FitXR, and the guy who kind of was instrumental in setting up Nike Training Club. So people with kind of deep health tech experience. We've got brilliant kind of design and UX people. Our chief strategy officer, for example, is the ex-global chief strategy officer for Havas, world's largest advertising agency, who was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and became a men's mental health ambassador after going through a difficult time and leaving that agency, and now has set up an award-winning agency himself called Bicycle. And often people are driven by passion, because they've helped us out quite selflessly in cases, because they see that it's the right thing to do, that there's a need. Quite often people will have friends, sadly, who've committed suicide or rather taken their own lives, I should say. And they understand that there's a problem and that we're out there to do something about it. So yeah, we've been very fortunate in kind of the advice that we've had. Yeah.
How many of the people on that team were there as a presentation to kind of attract the investment, and how many of you have recruited since you've got the investment?
Well, the investment is ongoing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that is important. That's an important point. So at the start we gathered a pretty solid kind of Avengers Assemble team, I'd say, right from the start, in terms of kind of innovation and experience, technology, strategy, COO, myself, some really key content people, a couple of great advisors, came together pretty quickly. But then we've gathered more along the way, like a bit of a snowball effect, I guess. And every time something new happens, we're able to add it to the deck. So it's just about
very organic,
updating the deck constantly. So then so every investor who comes on later and later, it's a better and better proposition, but you're constantly kind of updating that. And of course, the first people in are friends and family. So what they're really doing is betting on me. They've seen what I've done before. They know me. They know I'm passionate about this, that I tend not to give up on things, and so they go, yeah, okay, I'll put some money in. And as then you build the team a little bit, and you have some great advisors, and those advisors say to their, this has been really important to us, actually, having great advisors who've said to their contacts, because they know richer people than us, and more connected people than us. Oh yeah, I think there's something really in this, and there's a good team around it, and it's and I believe in it. And then that's kind of really helps the angel thing really to snowball, because one thing that's really important to talk about is, right at the beginning, I had to make a decision. So right at the beginning, and this is no disrespect to people who go this way or to people who do this, but I was kind of talking to people who did professional fundraising, if you like, and it was kind of like, okay, well, we'll go out to Dubai or the Middle East or wherever it might be, and we can tie this up really quickly. It's not a huge amount of money, it's £2.5 million. We can get a couple of family offices. But what was really important to me is that we had investors on board, smart money, if you like. So people who were invested, who believed in the project and could help us grow. Yeah. And so we went out of our way, and I spent all my time doing this. I mean, it was an incredibly lengthy process. But meeting people, talking to everybody. So everybody who's invested money, I've spoken to personally.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are motivated because of personal reasons, but equally they've got connections. So they're like, oh, I can see how. So, like we've got investors who provide kind of well-being packages for corporates, for corporations. So they can see how we can fit in. So they've invested in thinking, okay, well, later down the line we can help, and that helps us. So that's going to be such a mutually beneficial kind of investment, isn't it? Because they'll help us not just with the cash now, but equally helping us getting into those spaces which they're motivated for us to get into. So building that kind of smart money and that network of angels is incredibly helpful. And we've got a couple of super angel investors, as they're called, people who, by dint of them being on the cap table, then bring more money. Yep. So like so one of them, there's an EIS fund that's open to the public that copies that person's trades, and therefore so you get money from them. And another one is an LP to various kind of VCs and stuff in America. And so when we come to do our Series A, then they're already motivated to kind of help us get us into the VCs, which they themselves are helping to fund. So it's a longer road, but it's a smarter road, I'd say. And also in the extra few months that it's taken us to do that, our ideation has improved and our contacts and people who've come on board. So by not starting too early, we've built all that wealth of knowledge without spending any money, if you see what I mean. Whereas if we'd just gone to wherever and taken some cash, we were fortunate and somebody said, yeah, I'll give you this money right from the start, then we would have missed 3+ months of knowledge building at no expense to the investor.
It's an amazing story. That there's so much. It's so different to a lot of the other stories I've heard. It's organic. It's going from idea to testing straight away, which is a really interesting strategy, and one that I highly recommend. I've seen a lot of successes that way. I'm just wondering, just before we wrap up, what's the sort of biggest piece of advice you'd give to founders at the moment? Because it is quite tough at the moment in 2023 to raise. Is there any sort of key things that have really hit like a lightning bolt and we're so glad we did it that way or we did that?
Just on a practical level, EIS is a really useful tool. That's a really kind of
it makes it attractive for investors, right?
Yeah, it makes it really attractive. We made sure that we got advanced assurance, so we could say, look, we've already pre-cleared this with HMRC, which anybody can do. Takes a little bit of time.
Yeah,
did that through Seed Legals, and they were good.
Yeah,
and we got that. That's just a practical tool. Be prepared to spend all your time on it, I would say, if you want to bring in smart investors, so people who can help you grow. I think that is the best decision that we made. Yeah. So that, as I say, that by spending longer and getting the right people on board. We've also built our knowledge base by however many months, by not because we've delayed the spend by that amount of time. I think that, there's a phrase, if you're going through hell, keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, I don't think, at some points it was like, oh my goodness, because I would not start that spend until I knew we could finish it. That was my red line. Yeah. So it's no good having £500,000 for me. Yeah. And when times were difficult and things didn't go your way and everyone was like tech downturns and people got really cautious, it was really hard. And I think that it's kind of, if you're going through hell, keep going, is something that is doable if you are truly committed to the project. So I guess that would be, the only reason I'm here today is because I've given up a lot to do this. I mean, financially, security, career, everything has gone into this. I'm not going to go into what I've put into it, but it's a lot. I wouldn't have done that if I didn't believe that we could make a massive difference. And I truly believed in it. I feel like partly this is my life's work. Since I was 11 years old, I've been waiting to do this. And I just think that's, people can smell that for a start.
Yeah.
So it helps with investment. But equally, it helps to keep you going. So I just think doing something you're passionate about would be my number one piece of advice. Be prepared for it to take longer than you expect would be number two, but look for the benefits of that. Look for the benefits of that, because there are benefits in it taking longer. Get a great team around you. Be rigorous with your financials, so you can show to people who are investing and want to see where they're going to get return and that you're not going to lose all their money. You can show them, well, this is why we believe your money is well placed. Obviously, we can't eliminate risk, but we can de-risk. And look for the kind of tricks that can help you get you there, like EIS. Those are kind of some of the main things, and enjoy the journey, because I've absolutely loved it. It's been great to speak to all these wonderful people, and I'm so honored to meet so many of our investors and these incredible people who've just done incredible things with their lives, and just delighted that they're on board and believe in the mission. And enjoy the journey, I guess.
Brilliant. Well, that's fantastic advice, and I thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to founders and me and be part of this this broadcast. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Cheers.
Bye.